local author Linda Thompson will talk about her new book, Every Generation Needs a Revolution. Bridging the gap between the generations. That's the topic of this book, and we'll meet the local author behind it right after the break.
Good Day Arizona on 3TV, Arizona's Family, the place with more news in HD.
And welcome back to Good Day Arizona, everyone. Linda Thompson is the author of Every Generation Needs a Revolution, and this is such an interesting book. Linda, why don't you tell us what this is all about?
Every generation needs a new revolution is a quote that was given by Thomas Jefferson in the late 1780s. So the premise behind it is what's ever new. Does anything ever really change? Every generation has this driving need to establish their own identity. You don't get along with mom and dad. You don't get along with anybody that's older because they don't know anything. And then about the time you turn 30, 35, all of a sudden, gee, maybe mom was right about that. And so it's all
I'm in that phase right now, by the way. Yeah, Mom, if you're watching, you were right. But I was flipping through your book last night, and one of the concepts that you really hit on in here is how we can blend the generations. Talk to me about that.
Particularly in an office setting, if you understand what the values and the morals and the ethics and all of this are for each generation, build on their strengths. Don't capitalize on their weaknesses. Try to build a cohesive workforce by using what the strengths are of each generation, because they're phenomenal. I mean, kids your age came out of the womb multitasking.
Right.
Well, my age...
Thank you for calling me a kid, by the way. I appreciate that. I haven't heard that reference in a long time.
Well, coming from my side of the fence, you really are, because computers weren't even there when I was born.
Let's take a look at this comic strip. What is the significance of this?
Oh, I love this because it took me back to my days as a teen. Luann's talking to her dad about her t-shirt, and it's got the peace symbol on it, and she says, my clothing now has a message, and he's trying to figure out what the message is, and she finally stomps out saying, there's no way that I can communicate with you. And Dad looks at Mom and says, so what's the message? And she says, I think it was about peace, love, and tolerance. And that's, where have we not heard that? This is another perfect one. Dolly and Billy are the little kids from the computer generation, and they're obviously at live theater, and she says, we've got a few minutes because it hasn't finished downloading.
Oh, that is interesting. So trying to really understand the perspective, even if you have not lived or walked in those shoes.
That's right.
Okay, we have a graphic that shows us who the generations are, the ages, years of birth, and kind of what that means. Why don't you take us through this?
Well, we're really working with 6 or 7 generations now. The veterans, the youngest veteran is 79. There are about 63 million of them, or were. The silents range in age between 63 and 78, and there were 49 million of them. The boomers, of course, we all know. They've just hit 62 and as young as 44, and there was a whopping 78 million. The Xers are 43 down to 32, and there's 40 million of them, so they're kind of in the crunch. Then you get to my favorite generation, Gen Y, and they're from 18 to 31, and there's 70 million of them. And then you go on to the Millennials, and they started coming around about 1990, and we have no idea how many there's going to be there.
And you have some significant concerns about this generation. We have about a minute left. Can you touch on that?
Significant concerns. I have great hopes for the younger generation. The younger generation is more socially conscious than I've ever seen. The silent generation, it was do as you're told and don't ask questions. The boomers said rebellion from everything. The Xers, they just kind of stood back because they've been on their own for so long. Gen Y really wants to communicate, but they're finding that because they have tattoos and purple spiky hair, nobody wants to listen to them and take them seriously, and I think that's a real shame.
Well, I know in your book, too, you do talk about how a lot of kids today are kind of spoiled, and how parents need to be careful about that.
I did touch on that, and I've gotten a lot of comments about that, because our goal is always to have our kids have a better life than we have. Well, starting with the boomers, I'm not sure it could get much better. So where are we going to go from here? Boomers are buying toys in lieu of spending time with their kids.
Linda, thank you so much for being here. Once again, every generation needs a new revolution. Thank you so much for being here. Very interesting information.